Hello, all. I'm Dustin Jancic, editor-in-chief of WayToIndie.com, and along with me is fellow contributor Blake Ginnathan.
Hello, people.
Just in case you haven't been following our Hangouts here recently, we're doing a three-part Hangout series pairing up two writers from Way to Indie and to discuss each other's top five picks of the year so far. And it just so happens that we unintentionally paired writers up by location. Our first session was the Canadian Hangout featuring CJ and Nicola, and our second one, which should be on the site by the time you're watching this, is our West Coast writers, Bernard and Ananda, and I suppose this is our third and final installment, and you could dub it the Midwest discussion. Blake and I, both from the Midwest, so yeah, we can get right into it. I think we'll follow the same format as the others have been doing, which is we're going to start with our honorable mentions, films that didn't quite make our top five. Then we'll go through our top five. We'll go ahead and finish her out by saying revealing what kind of films we're looking forward to for the rest of the year, second half of the year. So we'll start off by honorable mentions. Blake, what are your honorable mentions?
I'm gonna name two. The first one I'll name is the Jake Gyllenhaal thriller Enemy.
No,
Yes.
that was one of
Yes.
mine.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm just, that's awesome.
we can
Yeah.
both gush over it. I like movies that really make me feel uncomfortable, and this one I was like itching myself, and I wanted to I wanted to get under covers while watching it. It was so creepy, and basically the film was about Jake Gyllenhaal is this college professor who kind of has like a really boring life, and he randomly one day finds out that he has a doppelganger who is an actor, who is a lot more assured version of himself, and he starts taking steps that kind of changes both their lives forever. And boy, I love some of the stuff that this movie was doing, especially a lot of the stuff that, involving spiders was my favorite stuff.
Yeah, that motif was really kind of interesting. It was really kind of creepy and eerie, and I think it really fit with the whole
Yep.
film. Really,
Yeah,
the whole film was like that.
there's one shot. I mean, I think it's near the end of the movie where it's a shot of the landscape of Toronto, and there's this giant thing. And I've been to Toronto before in person, and I'm trying to wonder, like, I never saw that when I was there. And they kind of zoom in a little bit, and it's this gigantic spider the size of Godzilla, and it's just the most unsettling thing I think I've seen this year in a movie.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's a good one. That was actually one of my two films that I was gonna say as my honorable mention. I guess my other one was gonna be the Grand Budapest Hotel. That one just fell outside my top five, though I think it's a great Wes Anderson film. Most of our writers have seen it. I'm sure most of our viewers who are watching this probably have seen it. It's a great film, totally Wes Anderson. There's nothing not Wes Anderson about it, which some critics do have a problem with. Maybe he's going back to his, the same things we've maybe seen before. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was it was a fun. There's a lot of stars. It was, again, very typical of Wes Anderson.
So
But
I have not seen the movie actually.
yeah.
Which previous Wes Anderson movie would you compare it to the most?
I think it's actually, in my opinion, it's very similar to Moonrise Kingdom, where
Which is probably, I think, his best movie.
yeah. So, and because up until Grand Budapest, I would say that that Moonrise Kingdom was probably his most accessible film. It was one that, I don't know, it just felt a little less. I could see more people liking it. It kind of
Yeah, it
appealed to
felt.
more people.
I'm not saying like Wes Anderson has a gimmick, but it felt less gimmicky than his previous movies, where he like his
Yeah.
style overwhelmed his stuff sometimes.
Yeah,
So
there was a little bit more of a story there, like a more
yeah,
in-depth story than
yeah.
sometimes there tends to be in his films. And I would say this one is probably the most story of any Wes Anderson film, even more so than Moonrise Kingdom. And so it kind of reminded me of that. There was definitely more story, although there was tons of style also involved. But yeah, it's really good. It's really easy to like, I think. And I think if you liked Moonrise Kingdom especially, you'll like this. And I think someone said it, I don't know if it was CJ on the site who did the review, which is posted online, or if it was someone else, but they said, if you weren't a Wes Anderson fan before, this is a great film to watch, because if you've hated all of his movies before, this one's similar, but it's even more accessible, I think. So, yeah, good film, totally worth it. It just slid as my number 6, I believe, when I made my top 10.
Sure.
So that was the one that was just outside of it. Enemy was my number 7 of the year. What was another one that you?
My last honorable mention that I will mention is Stranger by the Lake. Which is the French thriller about a young man who goes cruising at a lake in the French countryside. He's cruising for other men, and he happens upon a man who he thinks may or may not have committed a murder. And I mean, this movie had Hitchcock written all over it. I felt just the way. It's like a quiet movie, and there's so much going on with emotions and tension that it never boils over into anything. It's always understated, and I really loved how it was like that ticking time bomb that came down. It was like ticking down, like 10, 9, like something's gonna happen, and then it happened, but it wasn't like this massive explosion. It was like this little subtle incident at the end, and I thought it was in my top 5 for the longest time, and it kind of it was that versus my top 5, and it's going back and forth, and the other movie eventually won out, so I really, really liked it a lot.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I saw it too. It was really good. Yeah, I have nothing bad to say about the film. I agree with you. It was kind of a subdued kind of film but it was kind of weird because it was kind of subtle, but at the same time it was incredibly engaging, and I was kind of wondering what was going to happen next, and it walked that line pretty well, actually.
Yeah, and I love that it used a singular location. Like it didn't venture anywhere else, and it kept you very claustrophobic into the situation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So if I had to do one more real quickly, I would throw out since Enemy. I would say Oculus. Oculus was one that was within my top 10. It was so good. I think it's the best horror film, of the year for sure, from my standpoint. And actually one of the best horror films that I've seen in a long time. I'm not a huge horror fan, so I don't see a ton of them. But I thought this was excellent. I really, really enjoyed it. We do have a review up for it online, waytoindie.com. But yeah, it's a film that I missed at South by Southwest, and I think it played at TIFF last year.
Yep.
At the Midnight Madness section, where CJ saw it, a writer for us. He covered it and did an interview with the director as well. But yeah, it was a great film. It's just weird because it's a film essentially about a haunted mirror. And honestly, when I heard that premise, I was just like, God, it sounds terrible. But it's actually really smart considering the kind of simple synopsis.
Sure.
Totally worth seeing. You got to see. I know you haven't seen it, Blake, and you're a huge horror fan.
I know. Horror fans are going to hate me. I completely dropped the ball on that one. So.
Well, that's all right. You need to see it though. Definitely.
What happens is if my girlfriend gets a whiff of a movie, I have to wait to see it, and that was the case. She wanted to see it, and I couldn't venture out to see it myself, and plans didn't work out. So I really, really want to see it though. So
yeah, cool. Well, let's get into our top 5. We will just go in order from 5, 4 all the way down to 1, and we'll alternate our picks.
Okay.
So we'll start with what's your number 5 pick?
My number 5 is I believe it's his English language debut by Joon-ho Bong. It's Snowpiercer, starring Chris Evans, Tilda Swinton. Well, I guess I was gonna say a name, but it might ruin the story. Jamie Bell is in it. It's basically this futuristic science fiction action movie that takes entirely on a train moving across, I guess, the world. and basically all of society that's left that's survived this post-apocalyptic event is like there's like this class struggle on this train that is continuously moving around the world, and one day the poor people, they had enough, and they decide to I guess form a resistance and fight back against the rich people who live towards the front of the train. And from there on out, you get 2 hours of very stylized action sequences that are very well done.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I saw that too. It's actually on my list as well. I have it a little bit higher placed, and so I mean I can go into my thoughts when we get to mine. But yeah, I agree. I really really enjoyed this. I think this is a blockbuster science fiction
Yeah.
action film that it stands above the rest. I mean, ones that I've seen recently anyway. I think it's an awesome
Yeah.
film. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll go into what my thoughts maybe are that a little bit later, so that way we can continue the conversation when it gets to my pick. So on that film, but my number 5 pick is Like Father, Like Son. Recently rewatched the film for the first time since seeing it over a year ago in Cannes. And it didn't fall in my estimations at all. I was kind of worried that, obviously I felt really strongly about the film at the time, but, a lot can change in over a year. But it didn't fall at all, even after this recent rewatch. The film won the jury prize at Cannes, and it's about a family who receives the devastating news that their 6-year-old son was accidentally swapped at the hospital after his birth. So the family must decide whether or not to keep raising the child as their own or to raise their actual biological child. So there's a lot of complex issues that get brought up. The biggest one, being nature versus nurture. Sort of, does he want to, it sort of asks the question if how the child is raised has more effect than your bloodline.
Yep.
And other issues do get brought up as well, such as like class discrimination. That gets touched on a little bit too. One of the families is quite a bit more wealthy than the other, and there's it kind of touches on how their environments affect sort of the upbringing.
Yeah.
So it's almost a hard film not to like. It tugs at your heart a lot. Especially there's a lot of cute kids in it, 6-year-olds that are just awesome. But I thought it did a good job of making you stop and think along the entire way. What would you do? How would you handle this situation? It's a super difficult situation.
I too, I was completely surprised. I wanted to, I mean, I shouldn't say I wanted to, but I was expecting to not like this movie, and I really liked it a lot. Like you said, the whole the class situation, for example.
Mm-hmm.
The guy's a lot richer. He can, there's a point in the movie where he even says, "I'll pay them money and I'll raise both kids." And but even as a viewer, you wonder, like, is he even the best fit for both kids?
Yeah.
And I guess I pictured myself as the other parent, raising my kids that way. So I found a lot of interesting, we talked about it. It's kind of like we could understand why Spielberg would love this movie. I mean, there's cute kids. It's very sentimental. It's not trying to, do much more than really make you care for the characters a lot. Even the cold-hearted bastard who, works all the time. He comes around in the end, and it's really cool to see that. And I was really surprised how much I liked the movie.
Yeah, we should remind our viewers that Spielberg was the head of the jury at Cannes. So that's why
that's why I brought that up. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, no, I agree. I think clearly there's a big difference between the families, between the fathers. One who can afford to raise a child maybe better, but the other father who maybe doesn't have the money, but seems to have more of the love and seems to understand how to raise a child a little bit differently. He's a little more loose. He's less strict.
And he's got 3 kids altogether, and this rich guy has 1, and it seems like he just has all this love to give to all of his children,
right?
Versus this one guy who can't even give well,
Exactly.
barely give love to his own child, you know.
Right.
So
He's working a lot, and some can be said about the Japanese culture. It is a Japanese film. It is a foreign language film. But and so there's this, really strong pride that they have, in working and providing for the family, and
yeah.
that's certainly what this lead main father sort of entails. But yeah, no, totally good. Like I said, I think it's almost hard not to like. Of course, CJ and I in our last hangout,
CJ
we
didn't like
disagreed.
it.
Yeah, he found a way not to like it remarkably. But and I don't think it's not that he didn't like it, and it was brought
I
up
think
during
he
our worst
expected
films of the
more
year.
from it.
But yeah, I think he was more let down more than I think.
Yeah.
I don't think he thinks that's the worst film of the year. So it got brought up, probably not maybe in the right context or in the right
Yeah.
section. But
You guys had a long discussion on it though too. I was pretty surprised, but
yeah, he brought some good points up.
he did.
But
He did. Yeah.
yeah, well, let's move on to your number 4 pick.
My number 4 pick, not really an indie movie, but it's still a hell of a fun time. It's the Lego Movie, which I mean, I don't know what I can say really. It's just it's so energetic. I couldn't even keep up with it. I've never seen so much kinetic editing in an animated movie. I don't think I've ever seen something like this where I could not keep up with what was happening on screen.
Yeah.
And the voice work was so good, and the animation was amazing. I did see it in 3D, and I thought 3D was really good.
Oh, okay.
Basically, this one Lego worker one day finds out that he finds out that his world is turned upside down because of this evil Lego character played voiced by Will Ferrell wants to God, what did he want to do? He wanted to I forgot what happened, Dustin.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember the very setup of as Mr. Business, and he was gonna like instill. Gosh, I honestly
I
don't
look so
remember.
unprofessional right now, but I can't remember what he's doing. He's just a really evil dude who
Yeah.
wants to
I think
impart.
isn't he going after like the part that
Yes.
that that Chris Pratt, the lead guy, has. He sort
Yeah.
of obtains the special part that he needs, and that was his big thing. That was why he was sort of.
But they get like Batman, they get Aquaman, they get Superman, and they get all these Lego characters in there, and they have all these great jokes with involving
Yeah.
all their personalities of how Batman's his flaws and
Yeah.
if I do have one complaint about the movie, I did not like the ending at all.
What? Really?
Nope.
Wow.
I cringed when that part came on.
And like, I don't want to go into too many spoilers. I mean, if you watched our last series, I know that Ananda and Bernard got into it a little bit more in depth, and I think the ending is so spectacular. But it is so much of a twist that I feel like it almost ruins it, because up until a certain point, up until the ending, we can say that much. We'll allude to it, but I don't want to go into and say exactly
Sure.
come out upright. But I think up until the ending, it was a very good film. It was very good. It was well made. It was fun for the kids. It was fun for the adults.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily. In my opinion, I don't think it stood out as much up until if you took out the ending, the big sort of twist or reveal or whatever you want to call that ending. I think it was kind of a shock ending or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like it's out of the blue. I mean, the signs are there, and I
Yeah,
caught on early. Like I saw.
Sure.
I'm not going to say what it is, but I saw
Yeah,
something
you can,
that they were building with. Okay, and like they were using something to build a sculpture or something, and I'm like, okay, why would a Lego have that? And I was kind of
Gotcha.
like, I see what's going on
Yeah.
here. And then it happened. And I was kind of like, oh, this is so.
Yeah.
So it was really heavy-handed, is what it was.
I think I would agree with you on that 100%. Like it definitely was, but I don't know. For me, that ending really it set itself apart. To me, that's what made the movie over the edge. Because for me, up until that point, it was a good movie. It was fine. It was fun. It was enjoyable. It was entertaining. But for me, that ending put it over the top and it put it in a different category. For me, it put it in a completely different realm.
Sure.
There were still some good lessons to be learned, and and I actually have that film also a little bit higher on my list. So we'll get to that, and we can kind of go into my thoughts on it. But yeah, I guess we totally agreed that we liked the film, but I guess we have pretty varying differences on the ending. But but overall, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think it's a great film with a lot of great animation, and actually something that was brought up in part two. I don't know if it was. It must have been Ananda. I think because she had it also on her list. Most of our writers did, and they actually talked about how they liked how the lead wasn't necessarily like a superhero. He was kind of just an ordinary dude, who wakes up.
That's a very good point.
And I thought that was a really, obviously it was just a really good point that they brought up. I was like, oh yeah, that is very true. A lot of kid movies, they sort of have this lead that is really kind of supernatural and maybe has like a special power. This guy was just an ordinary guy. He didn't have any like special powers by any means.
He just had a lot of love to give.
Yeah, he was just kind of, it's a guy that you can't help but root for because he's just a really happy-go-lucky guy. And really the whole movie though is kind of about sort of not following trends and that kind of stuff too. So but yeah, I can go into a little bit more when I get to that on my list because like I said, it's a little bit higher for me, so we can kind of rehash it a little bit. So I'll go into my number 4 pick, which is also a Cannes title. Just so happens, and that just occurred to me that my number 4 and number 5 are both Cannes 2013 titles the other day. But this is Francis Ozon. Did I say that right?
I think it's Ozone.
Ozone.
Yeah.
Francis Ozon, Young and Beautiful. Another foreign language film. This is a stunning film about being 17 again. It's reinforced with the mention.
It wasn't my 17, but it's definitely someone else's.
I guess at an age where you're rebellious, kind of type of thing. And like the whole being 17 again is sort of reinforced in the film when students of a class sort of talk into the camera and recite their thoughts on the famous poem that goes along the lines of "You're never serious at 17."
Yeah,
that's a line from the poem. The film follows a beautiful,
a young and beautiful,
a very young and beautiful, go figure, gal, in the film named Isabel over 4 seasons, and she becomes a prostitute behind her family's back. Police eventually track her down when a man dies from a heart attack during one of her visits. And it kind of spirals sort of out of control-ish from there.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
I mean, it's not as, like, from the premise and hearing it, you would think that this is just, like, really, like, crazy, like, over the top, maybe very, like, I don't know, like a lot happening and a lot of in your face, but it's actually really subdued and kind of just, I don't know, for the subject matter of a 17-year-old becoming a prostitute, it's surprisingly, I don't know what the right word is for it. I don't know. How would you describe it, Blake?
For starters, I know we're agreeing a lot on these movies, but I too liked it a lot. I mean, I was very, very surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I would almost say it's like it kind of builds itself as a thriller at first, and then
it doesn't play out like one.
It does not. No, not even close. Right. The incident with the man having a heart attack and dying happened a lot sooner in the movie than I guess. I mean, I didn't see that scene coming, but it happened sooner than I guess it would in most movies, and from there I was kind of like, well, where is this movie going? Yeah. And to me, and you and I discussed it a little bit, that it's kind of, we both kind of agreed that it's almost about how this woman is growing up. Yeah. And that's how I saw it.
You're right. I think it's less of a thriller as it is of a coming of age story. It's really what it ends up being.
Yeah, it's a weird coming of age story because I don't want to say she's using her sexuality as that way of becoming a grown up, but
because she matures and you see that.
But I feel like she makes a mistake with becoming a prostitute, and she learns the hard way. Like reality bites down on her and says like, you really shouldn't be doing this because this is the repercussions of what could happen.
And in a beautiful scene, you find her. I guess what I really liked about the film is that it touches on a lot of things and it brings up a lot without necessarily saying them. For example, there was a couple instances where her stepfather and her have this sort of just a bizarre relationship, kind of just like this. There's a couple like not flirtatious, but there's a couple like weird.
No, they're definitely kind of flirting with each other. I think at some points.
But it doesn't come out and say that. Like they kind of like
No.
said, there's a couple weird things like that.
Yeah, and I feel like she has like I feel like she's a superhero in a way. Like she has this newfound power over men, and
totally.
she tries to use it, or she tries to see how far she can go with her stepfather. And I mean, unfortunately, something comes in to break that. But I feel like that's is essentially what is happening. Like she has this power, and she doesn't know how to how big it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then I mean, it's not necessarily a spoiler, but there's a great scene where then she finally sort of realizes her mistake when she's at this party with her friends after sort of a lot of the stuff's already gone on and happened, and set by maybe a terrific couple songs at the party, an MU330 song, or sorry, an M83 song and a Crystal Castle song, where it's just like blasting music at this party, and she sees a lot of her own peers, a lot of her own classmates, sort of partying and engaging in sex, and she just kind of like watches them with sort of like a grin on her face, but she's sort of just floating.
She's
like,
almost
I think
floating.
You described
Yes.
it pretty well. She's kind of almost like floating, like it's almost like an alternate reality almost.
Exactly.
Like time is slowing down. It is in slow mo. It's a great scene. But she's just sort of like watching these people make mistakes, and she's like, you know what? I've been there. I've made these mistakes, and I've sort of moved on, or at least I've recognized how
she's grown up a little bit. Yeah, and I mentioned to you, like, and I realize these movies are completely different, but it really reminded me of the Blue is the Warmest Color about this, and I know that the similarity is they're both French, but they're both about these stories about like women growing up through
exploring sexuality. Really,
they're learning the hard way. Like life is hard.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I think there's a lot of parallels. I think between the films. I think they're both excellent films. But I agree. I think that's true. So, definitely look for that Young and the Beautiful. We haven't really mentioned how we can find these films at this point. A lot of them are available on iTunes. This one, with the exception of Young and the Beautiful, I'm not 100% sure. I didn't do my research, but it is a foreign film. It didn't necessarily get a lot of attention outside of at the Cannes Film Festival. This one you might have a more difficult time getting access to, but Like Father Like Son, I think we figured out was on Netflix.
Yep.
Lego Movie is everywhere.
Yep.
And Snowpiercer's coming out on the 27th of June. So by the time you watch this, it should be out in a limited release. That one's not going to be wide. So, do you want to go on to your third pick then?
Absolutely. I might catch flack from fans of the site for this one.
This is where we're going to start disagreeing. So up until this point, like, and you had mentioned that we've been agreeing like pretty much like spot on, which is fine. That's awesome. But I think now is kind of the turning point where some of your picks, some of my picks, we're going to disagree with a little.
We'll see. My next movie is a science fiction movie. It has a huge budget, and it stars probably the greatest movie star of all time, Tom Cruise. I have a number 3, Edge of Tomorrow, which is the new.
You say that with such despair.
No, it's Edge of Tomorrow.
There you go.
It's a new Doug Liman movie. He's made some good movies in the past. I haven't been a huge fan of it. Like I loved Go. I thought Go was great. But this,
what else has he done?
I think he did the first. I think he did the first Bourne Identity movie.
Okay.
So Edge of Tomorrow, I mean, it's a pretty ubiquitous marketing campaign they have going for it. Probably because it's bombing, which is another reason why you should see it.
Is it bombing?
Yeah, it got beat out by some chick flick its first weekend, so I think it made like $30 million. But this movie has so much, and this is kind of like Lego Movie, where I can appreciate the energy that the movie has. It takes place in the future. basically this alien race invades Europe, and the world struggles to figure out how to stop it. And the war goes on for years and years and years, and they do not know how to stop it. And one day, Tom Cruise, who plays this high-ranking official in the U.S. Army, is on TV and he's talking about this new operation that the world is going to partake in a day's time. And soon you find out that Tom Cruise's character, is being overridden by, I believe, the British military, and they put him on the front line of this invasion. And it's really interesting. This invasion reminded me, it's not like a secret or anything, but of D-Day, of the Normandy invasion. And ironically enough, the movie was released on the 70th anniversary of the Normandy invasion. Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
And what I really liked about this movie was that Tom Cruise starts out as a complete pussy.
Yeah.
He, like, you look at Mission Impossible, you look at his other action movies, he's there to just take names, and he has all this confidence, but he completely sells the fact that he does not want to fight, doesn't know how to fight, he hates blood. I mean, it's a Tom Cruise performance that I've never really seen before, and I think it's one of his best, honestly. And I just loved the idea. Oh, and I guess I should mention that the movie plays out like Groundhog's Day. The initial day that Tom Cruise does his invasion, he happens to get the alien blood on him after he kills one of them, and this blood, gets into his, mixes up. He's able to relive the same day over and over and over and over again. And it's really interesting how he starts learning from his mistakes.
Yeah.
He starts learning how to fight in combat. He somehow interacts with the poster child of the world's resistance. I can't remember, Full Metal Bitch, I think that's what they called her.
Yeah.
Played by Emily Blunt, she's phenomenal. She's terrific in the movie.
She's awesome.
I mean, there's just so many things about this movie that I love. I love that they kill Tom Cruise probably, I don't know, 1,000 times maybe?
Yeah.
You don't know. And that's what's so great about the movie, is that there's times where Tom Cruise is progressing, like he figures things out, and he's like, all right, now I do this, now I can learn this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you'll start a day, and you're a lot farther than you were the previous time, and you wonder how many times has he actually done this.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
the movie never says it, but there's one instance where Emily Blunt figures out that they've done this before, and Tom Cruise is trying to keep it a secret. And you start to wonder why, and it's because he has no idea how to save her from that incident. And it's great because you start to fill your own mind with, well, how many times have they done this? And you kind of realize it's probably hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And just the idea that they have tried hundreds of times just with this one incident versus the other times they've tried, you got to figure they've been trying to defeat this alien race for years.
Right.
And I love that idea that the movie instills in the audience, that they have no idea how to beat this army. I mean, they have, and I just love that about the movie. And I'm going to go out of the way and make a bold prediction that this gets a Best Editing nomination for the Oscars next year.
Wow.
So I think the editing
is a bold pick.
I think the editing is terrific.
I would agree with you about the editing. I think this is one of those films, especially when you have so much repetition. Like you said, it's kind of like Groundhog's Day, where you end up rewatching a lot of the film a lot of the times because it resets. But it does a really good job of not making that too repetitious, where you're just like, you're bored. Like, I've seen this. It gets the idea across that he has to relive all these steps every single day. And I would agree with you. There is some really good editing there. It's a bold prediction. I really like the video game aspect of it.
Yeah.
It really plays out like a video game, because each time he dies, it's like restarting a level over and over again. over and over again, like in a video game.
Yep.
He quickly learns with each life how to survive a little bit longer and
Yep.
sort of how to progress in this level. So it's an interesting concept,
Yeah.
but I mean, for me, I was definitely not taking. It didn't blow me away maybe quite as much as I guess as it did you.
Sure.
It's really, again, a really interesting concept. But I think it's
Yeah.
a fine action film
Yeah.
that hits all the notes it sets out to hit. It's funny. There's a lot
Yeah.
of funny moments in it.
If you like watching Tom Cruise die, I mean, you're gonna really love this movie because he
You love it
died.
if you like Tom Cruise and if you hate Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
You get to watch him
exactly.
die.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like the one where he gets. I don't want to spoil too much, but the one where he gets ran over. I mean, that's hilarious.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good editing right there too, because he's about to get ran over and then boom, you know. And there's a lot of things like that where they do make some really cool kind of cuts, and then boom, he restarts the next day. He wakes up or whatever, you know, starts it all over again. So I mean, it was good. It was funny in times. It definitely was interesting. It definitely held my attention. So I mean, I do think that it served its purpose. But,
I mean, if I had one complaint, I kind of felt that the final battle was pretty, like, it's gonna let down a little bit. I mean, it kind of felt like I really didn't know how you could top the actual concept of the movie, because to me the concept of the movie was fun. You know, this Groundhog's Day with aliens and science fiction, and he has to learn, and then it's kind of like, well, how do you end that? And I guess for me, it's kind of like, that part wasn't interesting. I did really like the very, very, very last scene of the movie where Tom Cruise sees Emily Blunt, and it's like this really cool, like, just great moment that Tom Cruise has, and the movie just ends. And I thought that was a great ending.
They could have really ruined it with a really sort of Hollywood.
They could have gone further with it and ruined it, but they stopped right where they needed to.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. Like I said, I think it was fine. I would say it was good, but definitely wouldn't be, in my top 10 or maybe even top 20. But yeah, I mean, I saw it in theaters, and I certainly wasn't upset that I saw it. Like I didn't feel like it was a waste of my time. So my number 3 is the Lego Movie, which we had mentioned earlier. I guess I can kind of elaborate a little bit more with mine. We kind of mentioned and talked about it a little bit, but I think this is an amazing kids movie where the adults might actually enjoy this more than the kids.
I think so.
I mean, I think the kids will really like it. It's very animated, like you said. There's a lot going on, and it's really fun. But to be honest, there's a lot of messages in there that are really kind of. I don't know. I'm not sure if a kid would get all of them. There's certainly some subtext in there about sort of some political subtext in there. But the overall message is that to be creative, not always following the instructions. Right? It's a Lego movie, and so it's a pretty brilliant movie by them, by the way, because everything in the film is a Lego piece. And it's about building Legos, and but it's actually kind of I was surprised, because I thought it was just going to be this film by this company who is looking to just sell their product, right, which is Legos. And really, it almost goes slightly, maybe not against it, but it says, like, don't follow the instructions that come along with the Legos that you buy. Be creative. It's all about, like, sort of building and going out of the norm. Yeah. So I really appreciate that. But yeah, the animation was really cool, and everything about it was just awesome. About this normal sort of construction worker who is not a superhero, but is deemed to be who gets a special sort of I don't know what you call it. Well, not a power, but this object that Dr. or Mr. Business wants to obtain, and to sort of take over the Lego universe, so to speak. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, I grew up on Legos. I don't know if you did, and that's certainly helped.
And honestly, I mean, the theme of the movie is to think outside the box and not go along with. And as you were saying that, I was actually reminded of how many times I actually built something that wasn't instructed with the box it came with. I mean, I built castles out of, like, spaceship pieces of Legos, so.
Yeah. And then it was really cool that in the film they bring back, like you said, a whole array of sort of like Batman, played voiced by Will Arnett, who's just awesome, has the perfect voice for that.
Yes,
But they also
yes.
bring back like a sort of a retro Legos, the retro space dude with the jetpack that once you see him, you're like, oh yeah, I totally remember that guy from
Yeah.
like the 90s. But yeah, then I loved it how those, they had different set locations too. Like they build this whole universe. Lego is pretty awesome. They have all these different,
Yeah.
pieces you can buy, and they did a good job. Some of it takes place on, the sea with the pirates, and some of it takes place in the Old West.
Yep.
It's just a ton of fun. I feel like
It's a lot of fun.
and stay tuned for our site-wide list of our top films of the year so far. I won't say where the Lego movie ends up, but let's just say it's pretty high on that list. So it was
People
really well
liked it.
received by a lot of people.
People
I
liked
mean,
it. Yeah.
Really, probably the only one of the staff that didn't even have it in their top 5 would probably be Bernard. And I think everyone else at least had it on their list, if not in their top 5. So
Yeah.
totally worth seeing. Go see it. Bring your kids. But I really feel like this is one that the adults would really enjoy too. So let's move on, though, to your number 2 pick.
My number 2 pick is a thriller that I was like, I really liked. I mean, obviously, I liked it a lot. It's my number 2, but I was surprised at how much I liked it. It's called Blue Ruin, and it's by a director named Jeremy Saulnier. And ironically, when I was doing research for the movie after I made my list, I found out he did a movie that I had watched years ago. I have a friend, and him and I, a lot of times every week, we watch bad movies on purpose. And we purposely search bad movies on Netflix, or even we rent them, and we watch them, and it's kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000, where we
There you
just
go.
we make fun of the movies while we watch, and we have a blast. He actually made a really bad movie that I actually ended up enjoying called Murder Party, which is about this guy who gets this invitation on Halloween to come downtown to the city, dress as your favorite Halloween costume, and they kill people. And it's like a tongue-in-cheek, very comedic movie that in the end is really nothing. And the reason I bring this up is because Blue Ruin is completely the opposite of that movie. Blue Ruin is this mysterious and brooding thriller about this I guess I don't know if he's a hipster or what. He's like he's out to avenge a wrong done to his family. Mm-hmm. And what I loved about this guy was that he had no idea what he was doing. He wanted to kill some people, obviously, but he was so bad at it. I don't want to ruin too much of the movie. I mean, he gets shot by an arrow in one scene. I mean, he screws up some of his hits that he wants to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was really cool. I like that aspect.
I love that he was way over his head. He had no idea what he was doing.
Nothing went to plan, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he had all these things he wanted to do, but it didn't play out like a movie where like all these things just sort of fell in line, and he knew how to shoot a gun. There was a scene where he's trying to learn how to shoot a gun, I believe.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was the arrow. I can't remember. But he's learning these things, and he's really fumbling.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what he's doing. He makes all these mistakes, and that's actually what I really liked about it too, because I loved how you knew something bad was ultimately going to happen. This wasn't going to end well, the ending of the film. But the film made it apparent that this isn't going to go well.
No,
but yet it was still very thrilling to watch it all unfold. And
I think my favorite part of the movie was they just give you enough to go on. Like you're watching it and he's kind of doing these deeds, and you're like, what the heck is going on? And then you kind of find out, no one ever says what is going on. Like, you find out by just dialogue, that something has been done to his family. He's out there to get revenge. Like no one sits down and talks to each other like, "Oh, you did this to me," and I did. I'm gonna do it. Like you just kind of it's kind of like Children of Men. Like you find out what's happening through action in the background.
That's true.
And you know, like and like you said, like he has no idea what he's doing. And there's one scene where he's prepping this house to ambush someone, and like it actually happens. Like the whole thing starts, and he gets scared. Like he gets scared and almost has no idea what to do. Like it's it's kind of like you're gonna ask this girl out and you're like, all right, I'm gonna do this, and you see her and she's in makeup. You're like, what do I do now?
Yeah,
and
you can prepare all you want, then you get to it and you're just
yeah, that's what I really love about this movie is that it's this guy who's completely flawed. He's not the superhero that's trying to. And you don't even know if he's a good person. You know, like you don't know what.
You don't know much about his backstory,
exactly.
Really.
Yeah. So I really liked it a lot.
There's a physical transformation he does. There's a lot of cool things with it. I don't have much bad to say about the film. It did land outside my top 5, but inside my top 10. So I did have this on my list of best films so far of the year. I really enjoyed how subtle it was, yet how there's everything you said. I pretty much agreed with. I think it was a good film. So. My number 2 pick. So that was your number 2.
Yep.
My number 2 is Snowpiercer, which was your number 5. So we did talk about this earlier. And I guess I'll just kind of keep it short since we did already talk about it. But I really haven't been impressed with a concept and execution of a big budget action sci-fi film since the original Matrix. For me, this is one of those films that was just. It had all these amazing fight scenes that we come to expect from a summer action popcorn film.
Yeah.
But it also contains like a wildly creative single location environment and thoughtful concept of like class separation, like you kind of touched on before. And so it's not just like an action film that has some really cool fight scenes, which it does, but it also has everything that makes like kind of an art house film though too. Like it has a lot of meaning behind it, but also has this high concept, high budget. Really, I think it hits on all notes. I think here.
Yeah, and like I don't want to give a lot away. I'd never want to give a lot away. But like you said, the action scenes are so good. There's a couple that. There's one that I found out about before I had seen the movie, and it involves a classroom, and that's all I'm going to say. It involves a classroom full of kids, and
that was cool.
That's one of the best set pieces of the year, as far as I'm concerned. Another one that I really liked was where they go through a cave, and one set of warriors is prepared for fighting in darkness, and the other is not. And I thought that was a very, very well done sequence.
It's really clever. Like I said, sometimes you don't get them both, and this one you get them both. And I think I saw the review is up on the site now, waytoindie.com. So check out Snowpiercer. CJ did the review. It's just I've heard it being called like this, just like this action film that is set to like a art house blend. Like it kind of blends both of those in, and I think it's kind of true. I mean, it's not an art house film per se.
I don't think it's even close to an art house film.
It's way bigger than it's way better and different than say your normal action film.
I think Chris Evans continues to prove that he's a great leading actor.
Yeah, he's pretty decent here too. Yeah, for sure. And it's unfortunate that it's not marketing very well. And they decided the Weinstein Company decided to make it a limited release instead of a wide one. And there's all these sort of like editing sort of.
Yeah, they always make great decisions. So.
Yeah, well, so. That's Snowpiercer. Definitely check it out. I can't recommend it enough, and I don't see a lot of those type of I don't go to a lot of big budget action films, and
well, the budget's only about $35 million on it, which really isn't that high nowadays.
Yeah, I mean it's not like it's no Avatar, but
it's that's true.
Definitely, it's got some money behind it.
It does.
But let's go into now our final picks. Your number 1 pick of the year so far.
I think this is where Dustin and I are going to really disagree.
I would agree. Yeah, both of them for me and you. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. We'll get to yours here. My next film it's another thriller, and it does kind of remind me of Blue Ruin in a little aspect, a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I'm really surprised because the director Jim Mickle, I'm not a huge fan of his last movies. Either. I thought We Are was a well done remake, a lot of atmosphere to it.
Yeah.
Not a lot of
I didn't like it so much, but I'd agree. There's a lot of atmosphere, and I didn't see the
Yeah,
original, so it's hard for me to compare it to the
yeah.
original.
And
But
Stakeland, I'm not a huge fan of.
yeah,
CJ loves Stakeland, and I mean, I need to see it again. Like I wasn't blown away. I think the hype got to me. But
sure.
my number one pick of the year is Cold in July. A movie I was absolutely floored by. I was not prepared for this movie at all. And basically, the movie is about this man. It takes place all in the 80s. Well, of course it does. But um, one night, this man living in rural Texas wakes up because he hears or his wife hears a noise, wakes him up. He gets a gun out of his cabinet, and he finds an intruder in his home. And something startles him, and he shoots the guy in the head and kills him, which eventually sets off a chain reaction of events that he is completely unprepared for, and I would say it changes his life. Um, I would say, and this is obviously just my opinion, that the film is the sweatiest, bloodiest, most violent and disturbing thriller since No Country for Old Men.
Wow.
This, I think, this movie is one of the best thrillers in years
More
by
bloody than
far.
Blue Ruin, who walks
Yes,
around with like a ton of blood.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Um, I mean, first of all, Michael C. Hall from Dexter fame
Mm-hmm.
plays the lead, and I've personally never been a fan of his. I don't know what it is. It's not that I don't think he's a bad person or anything. I've never liked him and enjoyed anything I've seen him in. But I think this is like his best movie or his best role he's done yet.
Hmm.
And then Sam Shepard, the old wily veteran actor, comes in and he plays this character he's never done before. Um, I just want to talk about how much I love this movie, but I don't want to ruin anything for it either.
Yeah.
And then Don Johnson comes in, playing this completely insane. What is he? He's like a deputy. He works for the government in some way, but he's like a dirty cop. But he's not the dirty cop you're expecting him to be. And um,
Yeah.
what ends up happening is Michael C. Hall kills Sam Shepard's son, and Sam Shepard comes for revenge. And but then things start to turn a little bit, and you don't really see what's happening or what's coming, I should say. And what I loved about Cold in July is you're almost an hour into the movie, and you have really no idea what's going to happen next. You have no idea where the movie's going, and it finally settles in, and it has to choose a point of where it's going, and it
Yeah.
finally does. And it ends in a completely bloody mess. And I love this movie so much, and
Yeah.
it's the first movie in years that I've wanted to watch immediately after finishing it. I haven't seen a movie like that in a long time.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, actually, the ending is where it kind of ruined it for me, and I really didn't care for the film. There is a review up on the site as well for this, but I wasn't in love with it up until the ending, but really feel like the film derailed at that point. I really felt like it was unsure of what direction to take. I mean, I agree with you, a lot of things where a lot of things it gets to a certain point, and then it's sort of you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And I honestly feel like the film didn't know where it was going to go.
Sure.
I felt like the film began and it took itself seriously, not maybe completely. I mean, he does have a mullet after all, but it was set maybe in that time period. I guess I don't know what the intentions
Yeah.
were, but then it morphs into this like. It just gets really ridiculous. In my opinion, there's fight scenes where the bad guy gets kicked in the genitals for no reason other than I think comic relief. It was kind of funny. The ending kind of gets really over the top, and you can take it either way. I mean, it could be really fun for fans of the genre, but for me, I didn't care for it. I
Yeah.
really didn't like the movie.
For like and how I saw it, and I mean CJ saw it before I did, and CJ was like, "You got to watch this movie. I'm not going to say anything. Just watch it and tell me what you think."
Yeah.
And I watched it, and I'm like, "Holy shit, this movie is awesome!"
Yeah.
And like one of the things that and this is to me, the movie is a throwback to like the grindhouse midnight movies of the 70s and 80s. And there's a few things that make me feel that way. One, the score, which is it kind of reminded me of like a Tangerine Dream, a score from like Michael Mann's Thief,
Sure. Yeah.
or oh, what else? Maurice Jarre did some stuff like that too.
Hmm.
But like it has like this great synthesizer pulsating beat that like John Carpenter would have done. You know, like
Yeah.
with like Escape from New York and uh, what's that other Kurt Russell movie? Oh, he did a bunch of Kurt Russell movies, but Big Trouble in Little China. You know, like and
Sure.
like the violence was over the top and the
It was.
gore,
Yeah.
and like I felt like this movie should have been paired with Tarantino's movie and the Grindhouse movies. Like
Yeah.
I felt like this was a great Grindhouse midnight movie that Sam Peckinpah would have loved to watch. You know, like and like it's got that score. Like
Hmm.
the villain. I'm giving so much away with this, but the villain is a Wyatt Russell, who is Kurt Russell's son in real life.
Oh, I guess I didn't know that.
The,
I realize that.
the font of the credits at the end is the same font that John Carpenter uses for all of his movies. So I felt like Mickle was kind of like, I got this pulp noir thriller that, like, and I'm gonna maybe like just hark back to what John Carpenter was doing 30 years ago,
Sure.
and I guess just all of that he got right, and I loved the feel of this movie. Like there's that great scene where Michael C. Hall is afraid that Sam Shepard is going to come to his home and do something to his child, and like
Yeah.
they show the car driving in the rain, and the raindrops are hitting the lid of the car, and there's like this bum 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 bum, like this pulsating score, and the police are there watching the house, and
Yeah.
I loved, like, Mickle to me gets everything right. Now, having said that, I agree with you. I think the movie starts out in one way with this great, like, atmospheric thriller that
Yeah.
you're almost like, it's almost a horror movie. You're almost afraid of what's going to happen, and then like it kind of reveals what's happening. With the police corruption and what their intentions were with this initial murder, and I like you're right. The movie needs to choose a direction, and it goes in a way, and I think you're either gonna like where it went, and
Yeah.
I think you're not gonna like. And I ended up liking it because I don't think it really like betrays what initially it tends to be. I think it's in a way two-faced, but
Sure.
just not in a bad way. Because the end of the movie, I mean, there's this great scene where Michael C. Hall shoots this guy in the head, and his blood shoots onto the light, and the whole room goes red.
That
I mean,
was an awesome.
I mean,
scene.
if that's not a midnight movie scene,
Yeah.
then I don't know what is. So
I would agree.
I
I like
mean,
that scene, but yeah, I would agree. I think it's going to sort of maybe divide audiences at a certain point.
I think so. And in my opinion, this is Jim Mickle's best movie by far.
I would agree with that too. I haven't been a big fan of this, so for me, this isn't like a huge, maybe achievement, but
Yeah.
it was his best so far, in my opinion, too. So for keeping under time constraints, I'll go ahead and I'll quickly talk about mine. My number one, real quick, and that was Lars Van Trier's Nymphomaniac, Volume 1 and Volume 2, technically, since they're really kind of the same film, but what they did is, I believe, from what I understand, is the studio got it and said, you're not going to make a 4-hour or 5-hour film. Let's make this a two-parter or a
Yeah.
two-volume. That was my understanding. Isn't that what you thought then too?
Yeah, well, I think Lars Van Trier is hard to sell,
Yeah.
and then when he's basically making a movie about this girl who loves to have sex with almost everything, that's even harder to sell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, love him or hate him, Lars Van Trier is a genius filmmaker. Very, provocative. And while the marketing campaign, kind of talking about that for Nymphomaniac may come across it might have crossed the tasteless boundaries, including like a poster of all the characters and
Well, they had a
various
poster for each
sexual-
character,
14, I believe, all like the 14 characters.
all having an orgasm essentially.
Yes, yeah, and again, that might be a little tasteless, but the actual film didn't contain, I didn't think, any unneeded sex scenes or any tasteless sex scenes, in my opinion. I think they were all for a reason. They didn't show them just to show them, in my opinion, at least not in the edited version that most people have seen up until this point. I know that there's a completely unedited.
Well, for
longer
people who haven't seen the movie, explain what it's about.
So basically, it's about a woman played by Charlotte Gainsbourg who recalls her troubled life, her troubled story of being an nymphomaniac, to a man who finds her sort of distraught in an alley. And that's really what it is. It's basically her recalling her life, and as like you mentioned, someone who is addicted to and wants to have sex with everything, basically. And then she gets to a point where she can't achieve an orgasm, and sort of the struggles and psychology and everything that kind of happens at her life at that point too, which got her to the very beginning of the film where we see her in the alleyway. I think it opens awesome with sort of really subtle, really slow, really kind of quiet, and then Ramstein comes in blaring loudly, and I think that sets the tone pretty early on.
It's funny, like that scene happened, and I was like, "Did I leave Spotify on accidentally?" Or
because it almost doesn't fit. Like it just comes out of nowhere, and you're just like, "Whoa!" Like you're awake and you are kind of thrown into things.
You know, I actually like the posters for the movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I didn't like them. I just thought that they, like some people argue, well, is the film just about sex, and is it just trying to sell itself on that? And it's like, no, there's a.
I don't know. I kind of felt Lars von Trier is just being Lars von Trier and like, hey, let's just have these guys having orgasms on a poster.
You think that was his call, or the studios, to sell the film, to market the film? I mean, I don't know. I don't know
either.
I
mean, I didn't like it as much as you did. I thought Volume 1 was a lot better than Volume 2. I actually really didn't care for Volume 2 at all. I kind of lost interest 30 minutes into it. I thought Christian Slater was really bad in the movie.
I will agree with that 100%. I think all the rest of the cast were amazing. I thought Stacey Martin was fantastic for her first film.
She's
formal model.
She's great. She's gonna be a star.
Gainsbourg is good. Shia LaBeouf's good. Uma Thurman's awesome. She has a really cool scene.
I actually didn't like Shia LaBeouf in it at all either. I thought his little
I thought he was good.
His little accent that he was trying, I didn't really care for. In my opinion, I love the Uma Thurman scene. Like, for me, Lars von Trier works the best when I'm feeling uncomfortable. And I'm like,
I felt uncomfortable a lot in this film.
I didn't at all. The one scene I did feel uncomfortable was the Uma Thurman scene. She's like this wife who realizes her husband's cheating on her with this young. I mean, is she even 18 at that point? I don't even know. And she brings her kids over to the place that she lives, and it's kind of like, well, this is your new mom now, and she's gonna. I'll be serious. It was just so awkward because Uma Thurman was so she was a different character. She was like a character out of a different movie, and somehow it still worked. Like she was so distraught and she was crying, and I thought this was like her best performance since Kill Bill. Honestly,
yeah, I would agree on that 100%.
I thought she was amazing.
Awesome. I do agree that Christian Slater was a throwaway character. I didn't particularly like him, but for me, he's about the only one that I didn't care for, and I really thought he was not great.
And another thing I absolutely love that Lars von Trier used is it Born to be Wild? In that sequence where they're boarding a train, like halfway, I just couldn't believe I was hearing that in a Lars von Trier movie, And then they play "Burning Down the House" by Talking. I mean, it's
it's just that one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've only seen 3 Lars von Trier movies. Only his most recent, Antichrist, Melancholia, and this one. And I think this is the worst for me. Like
really? Wow.
Yeah, I would say Melancholia is my favorite, followed by Antichrist, and then Nymphomaniac. So.
I've always been in the camp where I've always appreciated Lars von Trier, but I don't necessarily liked his films to the extent that some people have. And this was my first one that I was blown away. I was blown away by it. I think there's a lot of course, sort of psychological stuff that goes on. There's obviously a lot of things that are stimulating on screen, but I think it contains a lot of philosophical parallels that are equally as stimulating as the things that you see on screen. There's a lot of kind of really cool metaphors. Sort of the underlying one, or the one that they keep bringing up, the running one, I should say, is comparing sort of sex and sexual, escapades to fly fishing.
That was really interesting.
Really kind of interesting sort of play there, and there's a lot of cool sort of metaphors. And I think it's a lot smarter than I guess I thought it was. Because you're right. I mean, Lars von Trier is this like sort of master at shocking audiences. That's what he does. And
Yeah.
this
And
wasn't all shock. This was some
yeah.
interesting, some smart. There's stuff besides just I'm going to show you something and I'm going to shock you and make you feel uncomfortable, because I did feel that way, but I didn't always feel that way. Not like
I
some other
just
Punisher
I didn't
films,
get
but
that at all with this movie. I just it just didn't do it for me. Um, I mean, if we were to like actually say they're separate movies, I would probably have Nymphomaniac Volume One pretty close to my top five. But
okay.
for me,
Two
Volume
brought it
Two
down a lot for
do
you.
brought it down a lot for me. Yeah,
And it did. And I would agree. I didn't think two was as strong. I thought one was definitely better. But we did make a conscious effort that before we made our list that we were going to count it as one.
yeah,
So that's why I'm including both of them. But I would agree with that for sure. Yeah, I like
yeah.
one way better. So well, there you have it. There's our top five lists, our favorite films that came out so far on the first half of the year. We'll go. I'll just quickly recap the list for everyone. Blake's top five was, starting for number five, was Snowpiercer, Lego Movie, Edge of Tomorrow, Blue Ruin, and Cold in July, which was number one. And my number five was Like Father, Like Son, Young and Beautiful, The Lego Movie, Snowpiercer, and Nymphomaniac.
Yep.
Um,
Cold in July and Blue Ruin you can find on iTunes.
yeah,
Edge of Tomorrow, it's probably not in theaters anymore since no one saw it. Lego Movie just came out on DVD, and
yeah.
Snowpiercer comes to select theaters this Friday.
Yeah, yep. The 27th, I believe, is the limited date. So looking ahead, we're going to do a quick, just looking ahead, throw a couple films out there that we either saw in a film festival that we couldn't count because one of our qualifications was it had to be out in this first half, so by the end of June, or films that are coming out later in the year that we're looking forward to. So what are some of the films that you were looking forward to?
I have a couple, and one of them actually came out already. I just don't live in a cool enough city to get it. And that's Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin,
Yeah, I want to see
which
that too.
I mean, Bernard loved it, CJ loved it, and everyone that I talked to loves it. And
Yeah,
I want to see it so badly, and I have to wait.
yep.
So that one did make my list. Or I should. Oh, that's not fair. I have
You
not
look
seen
forward
that
to
one
seeing
yet.
it.
I
Yeah,
look forward to seeing it. And another one, is one that you and I briefly talked about before we came on air, was the Roger Ebert documentary Life Itself, which I am
yeah,
dying to see because I
yeah.
love the book. So,
I
and I
got
love Roger Ebert too. I mean, that's
yeah.
huge
Ro-
influence on all our lives. So,
Exactly. Yeah, and I got to see the film. I almost included it on our top when we were making our lists, my top 10 list anyway. I almost included in that, but then realized that it didn't come out yet. It didn't qualify for this list for
yeah.
this first half of the year. It's a fantastic documentary from Steve James from Hoop Dreams.
One of my
Um,
favorite movies.
yeah, one of the, probably a lot of people wouldn't argue if you said that was one of the best documentaries out there. And this one's about the late great Roger Ebert. I'm fairly certain I speak for most critics, most writers on Way Too Indie or any outlet really for that matter, that Roger Ebert inspired us all to love movies, to talk about movies, and then ultimately for us to write about movies. And then it's a lovely tribute to the legend, recalling his story and his life and totally awesome. I wish I could include on this list, but later in the year maybe it'll show up on there. So it's an awesome documentary worth seeking out. Definitely a film to look ahead for. The other one that would be on my list would be Paul Thomas Anderson's Inherent Vice, which I really hope will be playing at the Toronto International Film Festival.
It'll be
Although
at
I'm
Venice,
not
I betcha.
yeah, I'm not holding my breath, but I'm hoping it'll play at least. Maybe if it doesn't premiere, I just hope it plays. I don't care if it premieres or not.
That's what you're going this year, aren't you?
Yes, we'll be going. So look forward to our coverage of TIFF this year with CJ, who typically goes, has in years past, and I'll be going for the first time to TIFF. So I look forward to that. So. Well, there you have it. I think we're done with our third and final installment of our best of 2014 so far series on our typical Hangout session. So be sure to check out waytoindie.com for our official top 5 films of 2014 so far. That'll be coming out here very shortly. By the time you see this, the list probably is going to be out there. That's a compiled list of all the writers contributed towards, and we list all the best films, many of which we talked about here in this Hangout. So yeah, and then keep an eye for our normal semi-regular Hangout sessions that we do from time to time. We'll try to make it more regular. And definitely subscribe to us on YouTube if you enjoyed this. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this, and it's been fun. Your number 5 pick.
My number 5 is I believe it's his English language debut by Joon Ho Bong. It's Snowpiercer, starring Chris Evans, Tilda Swinton. Well, I guess I was gonna say a name, but it might ruin the story. Jamie Bell is in it. It's basically this futuristic science fiction action movie that takes entirely on a train moving across, I guess, the world. And basically all of society that's left, that's survived this post-apocalyptic event, is like there's like this class struggle on this train that is continuously moving around the world. And one day, the poor people, they had enough, and they decide to, I guess, form a resistance and fight back against the rich people who live towards the front of the train. And from there on out, you get 2 hours of very stylized action sequences that are very well done.
Yeah, I would agree. I saw that too. It's actually on my list as well. I have it a little bit higher placed, and so I mean I can go into my thoughts when we get to mine. But yeah, I agree. I really really enjoyed this. I think this is a blockbuster science fiction action film that it stands above the rest. I mean, ones that I've seen recently anyway. I think it's an awesome film. So
yeah.
So we'll go into what my thoughts maybe are that a little bit later, so that way we can continue the conversation when it gets to my pick. So on that film, but my number 5 pick is Like Father, Like Son. Recently rewatched the film for the first time since seeing it over a year ago in Cannes. And it didn't fall in my estimations at all. I was kind of worried that, obviously I felt really strongly about the film at the time, but, a lot can change in over a year. But it didn't fall at all, even after this recent rewatch. The film won the jury prize at Cannes, and it's about a family who receives the devastating news that their 6-year-old son was accidentally swapped at the hospital after.
I really, really liked it a lot.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I saw it too. It was really good. Yeah, I have nothing bad to say about the film. I agree with you. It was kind of a subdued kind of film but it was kind of weird because it was kind of subtle, but at the same time it was incredibly engaging, and I was kind of wondering what was going to happen next, and it walked that line pretty well, actually.
Yeah, and I love that it used a singular location. Like it didn't venture anywhere else, and it kept you very claustrophobic into the situation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So if I had to do one more real quickly, I would throw out since Enemy. I would say Oculus. Oculus was one that was within my top 10. It was so good. I think it's the best horror film, of the year for sure, from my standpoint. And actually one of the best horror films that I've seen in a long time. I'm not a huge horror fan, so I don't see a ton of them. But I thought this was excellent. I really, really enjoyed it. We do have a review up for it online, waytoindie.com. But yeah, it's a film that I missed at South by Southwest, and I think it played at TIFF last year.
Yeah.
At the Midnight Madness section, where CJ saw it, a writer for us. He covered it and did an interview with the director as well. But yeah, it was a great film. It's just weird because it's a film essentially about a haunted mirror. And honestly, when I heard that premise, I was just like, God, it sounds terrible. But it's actually really smart considering the kind of simple synopsis.
Sure.
Totally worth seeing. You got to see. I know you haven't seen it, Blake, and you're a huge horror fan.
I know. Horror fans are going to hate me. I completely dropped the ball on that one. So.
Well, that's all right. You need to see it though. Definitely.
What happens is if my girlfriend gets a whiff of a movie, I have to wait to see it, and that was the case. She wanted to see it, and I couldn't venture out to see it myself, and plans didn't work out. So I really, really want to see it though. So
yeah. Cool. Well, let's get into our top five. We will just go in order from five, four, all the way down to one, and we'll alternate our picks.
Okay.
So we'll start with your. What's
Doppelganger, who is an actor, who is a lot more assured version of himself, and he starts taking steps that kind of changes both their lives forever. And boy, I love some of the stuff that this movie was doing, especially a lot of the stuff that, involving spiders was my favorite stuff.
Yeah, that motif was really kind of interesting. It was really kind of creepy and eerie, and I think it really fit with the whole
Yep.
film. Really,
Yeah,
the whole film was like that.
there's one shot. I mean, I think it's near the end of the movie where it's a shot of the landscape of Toronto, and there's this giant thing. And I've been to Toronto before in person, and I'm trying to wonder, like, I never saw that when I was there. And they kind of zoom in a little bit, and it's this gigantic spider the size of Godzilla, and it's just the most unsettling thing I think I've seen this year in a movie.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a good one. That was actually one of my two films that I was gonna say as my honorable mention. I guess I can. My other one was gonna be the Grand Budapest Hotel. That one just fell outside my top five, though I think it's a great Wes Anderson film. Most of our writers have seen it. I'm sure most of our viewers who are watching this probably have seen it. It's a great film, totally Wes Anderson. There's nothing not Wes Anderson about it, which some critics do have a problem with. Maybe he's going back to his, the same things we've maybe seen before. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was it was a fun. There's a lot of stars. It was, again, very typical of Wes Anderson. But
I have not seen the movie actually.
Yeah.
Which previous Wes Anderson movie would you compare it to the most?
I think it's actually, in my opinion, it's very similar to Moonrise Kingdom,
Which is probably, I think, his best movie.
yeah. So, and because up until Grand Budapest, I would say that that Moonrise Kingdom was probably his most accessible film. It was one that, I don't know, it just felt a little less. I could see more people liking it. It kind of
Yeah, it
appealed
felt.
to more people.
I'm not saying like Wes Anderson has a gimmick, but it felt less gimmicky than his previous movies, where he, like, his
Yeah.
style overwhelmed his stuff sometimes.
Hello, all. I'm Dustin Jancic, editor-in-chief of WayToIndie.com, and along with me is fellow contributor Blake Ginnathan.
Hello, people.
Just in case you haven't been following our Hangouts here recently, we're doing a three-part Hangout series pairing up two writers from Way to Indie and to discuss each other's top five picks of the year so far. And it just so happens that we unintentionally paired writers up by location. Our first session was the Canadian Hangout featuring CJ and Nicola, and our second one, which should be on the site by the time you're watching this, is our West Coast writers, Bernard and Ananda, and I suppose this is our third and final installment, and you could dub it the Midwest discussion. Blake and I, both from the Midwest, so yeah, we can get right into it. I think we'll follow the same format as the others have been doing, which is we're going to start with our honorable mentions, films that didn't quite make our top five. Then we'll go through our top five. We'll go ahead and finish her out by saying revealing what kind of films we're looking forward to for the rest of the year, second half of the year. So we'll start off by honorable mentions. Blake, what are your honorable mentions?
I'm going to name two. The first one I'll name is the Jake Gyllenhaal thriller Enemy.
No,
Yes.
that was one of
Yes.
mine.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's awesome.
We can
Yeah.
both gush over it. I like movies that really make me feel uncomfortable, and this one I was like itching myself, and I wanted to I wanted to get under covers while watching it. It was so creepy, and basically the film was about Jake Gyllenhaal, this college professor who kind of has like a really boring life, and he randomly one day finds out that he has it.
Yeah, there was
So
a little bit more of a story there, like a more
yeah,
in-depth story than
yeah.
sometimes there tends to be in his films. And I would say this one is probably the most story of any Wes Anderson film, even more so than Moonrise Kingdom. Um, and so it kind of reminded me of that. There was definitely more story, although there was tons of style also involved. But yeah, it's really good. It's really easy to like, I think. And I think if you liked Moonrise Kingdom especially, you'll like this. And I think someone said it, I don't know if it was CJ on the site who did the review, which is posted online, or if it was someone else, but they said, if you weren't a Wes Anderson fan before, this is a great film to watch because if you've hated all of his movies before, this one's similar, but it's even more accessible, I think. So, yeah, good film, totally worth it. It just slid as my number 6, I believe, when I
Sure,
made my top 10.
sure.
So that was the one that was just outside of it. Enemy was my number 7 of the year. What was another one that you want to
My,
mention?
my my honorable mention that I will mention is Stranger by the Lake, which is the French thriller about a young man who goes cruising at a lake in the French countryside. He's cruising for other men, and he happens upon a man who he thinks may or may not have committed a murder. And I mean, this movie had Hitchcock written all over it. I felt just the way it's like a quiet movie, and there's so much going on with emotions and tension that it never boils over into anything. It's always understated, and I really loved how it was like that ticking time bomb that came down. It was like ticking like down like 10, 9, like something's gonna
Yeah.
happen, and then it happened, but it wasn't like this massive explosion. It was like this little subtle uh, incident at the end, and I thought it was in my top 5 for the longest time, and it kind of just it was that versus my top 5, and it's going back and forth, and the other movie eventually won out. So